and your busy schedule to be here tonight. I really appreciate that a lot because without you, really, we can't do the work that we do in the community. So it's very important that we're able to have you here. For those who were able to help in any way, shape, or form getting tonight ready, I really do appreciate you. This is the first workshop. It's not the very first time that some of you will meet with regards to West Sugar Creek corridor, but this is really the first workshop when it comes to this playbook. And so the work that you've been doing have a major impact on the work that you will be doing tonight. And so the work tonight, through the different surveys that we've been able to do throughout the process, and other things that you've been working on as key stakeholders, all of those things are so crucial to helping us as staff and as least as a city in identifying the different opportunities we have for investment of your time and resources as well. You are familiar with our Corridors of Opportunity program, which Council embarked upon about a year ago, and which we're going to be building on into this year. So we definitely are committed, even though it may be the first workshop tonight, it's not going to be the last time. We're definitely committed to make sure that we work with you as residents in groups, one-on-one, as business owners, also as property owners, and that's very important to make sure that we establish a shared vision for the West Sugar Creek corridor, and also develop some strategies that can actually help us achieve the outcome that we all want to see, especially what you want to see in this corridor. So Rachel and I have had.
Excuse me, I think there's somebody who hasn't muted their microphone because I hear children in the background.
Thank you very much for that.
Taiwo, you went back on mute.
Am I okay now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so Rachel and I have talked about this previously, about this corridor, and we've looked at different aspects of this work and how we can make sure that at the end of the day, we deliver not just what the city wants, but really what the community wants. And so as she and the team will be explaining later, this playbook that we're going to produce as a result of this will be a lot of your input in the process. So collaboration is very important because that's really what's going to guide investment. It's also going to guide us as a community to make sure that we bring additional partners and other investment to achieve our goals for the corridor. I don't live on this corridor, but my favorite restaurant is on this corridor, Samoa. So I come here every so often, whether on weekends or during the day or even in the evening. And I'm able to see a lot of things going on there myself that I've made note of. So I want you to know that from the Assistant City Manager's office, whether it's myself or my colleagues, Tracy Dodson, Assistant City Manager for Economic Development, or Liz Babson, Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services. Liz Babson, Director of Transportation, and Pam Whiteman, Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services. All four of us continue to meet to make sure that from the leadership level, we know what's going on along this corridor. So it's not just a desktop thing for us where we sit in the office and expect staff to go do the work. We actually drive on the corridor. We take notes. We kind of follow up with staff to make sure that the vision that the city manager and the council had in terms of the corridors of opportunities are being realized from corridor to corridor. Perhaps even more importantly, that what you'll be sharing with us that will find their ways into the playbook become implementable over the next months. I don't want to necessarily say years, but over the next months when we really start launching into at least beginning some of the implementation. So once again, I want to say thank you very much to all of you for taking the time to be here tonight. I wish I could stay with you for the rest of the time, but I also have to go and present the comprehensive plan to another group this evening that started at 6. But I'll definitely make sure that next time we're having a workshop, that I will be here fully and present for the duration of the time. So thank you again. Rachel and team, please take it away.
Thank you, Taiwo. We really appreciate you being able to join for the first few minutes, and I hope your next meeting goes very well. All right, so I want to go ahead and say again, thank you all for being here tonight, taking the time out of your busy schedules. And I know a lot of people have online meeting fatigue, and I appreciate you being here. This presentation is being recorded so that folks who aren't able to attend tonight will be able to see the recording later on their own time. There'll also be opportunities for everyone to give input through a survey we will make available online, asking similar questions to what we're going to be asking tonight during the breakout session. So I just want to reassure everyone, if you see someone, one of your neighbors that you were hoping were going to be here, there'll be opportunities for you to help them get them plugged in after tonight. So hopefully we are ready to go over to the next person. So Charlene, do you mind kicking us off with sharing a few words that Mr. Floyd Cherry from Hidden Valley wanted to share for tonight?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Charlene Duncan. I'm with the City of Charlotte's Housing and Neighborhood Services Department, and I serve as the Northeast Service Area Community Manager. And I'd like to share an opening statement on behalf of Mr. Floyd Cherry, who is the president of the Hidden Valley Community Association. And the statement reads, the Hidden Valley community has remained an active part of the greater Charlotte community for many years. There's been several programs and services brought to us for support. The I-85 Design Sprint program fits that description too. When the process began earlier last year, the city reached out to ask for our input, and we have provided feedback throughout this process. It is important for this work to move forward because it supports the Hidden Valley Neighborhood Association's efforts to have a community where people want to continue to live.
Thank you, Charlene. I appreciate you sharing the words from Mr. Floyd Cherry. We're sad that we're missing him tonight, but I'm sure he'll be one of the folks who are listening into this recording later on.
Definitely.
Thank you. All right, and then Mr. Witherspoon, I wanted to give you the opportunity to share a little bit from the Hidden Valley CDC perspective, especially given your participation in the design sprint. Let's see, there you are.
Thank you, Rachel, and good evening to all. Last summer, I had the opportunity to participate in the Sugar Creek I-85 Design Sprint. And right down to today's kickoff to the Corridors of Opportunity Playbook campaign has and is providing an impactful opportunity for city, business, and community collaboration. Because, you know, after all, we all want the same thing, a safe and secure corridor for all who visit, play, work, and live here. And I think that's how the sprint kind of started out, with that objective. This corridor, only known by some as Exit 41, has its crime and safety challenges, but nevertheless, there has been some new and recent developments in the area, including a 180-unit apartment complex. Now, hopefully this development does not create new challenges, but brings new partners to the table. The Hidden Valley CDC commissioned a community reinvestment plan that was completed in December of 2019. One of the four cornerstones of this plan is the recognition of strong edges, as advocated by this corridor of opportunity concept. The Valley residents, I believe, realize that strong and vibrant edges bordering the place they call home is a most desirable community asset. Therefore, this project, I believe, should be a magnet for city and community investment, as we all share in the productive and beneficial outcomes that together we can all produce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon, for those words of wisdom and encouragement as we continue to partner together and move forward. And next, last but not least, for introduction remarks, I wanted to kick it over to Teresa McDonald to introduce herself from the Derrida area. Teresa, would love you to be able to join us. Let's see, I think I can unmute. There you go.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you. Yes, I am with Derrida Statesville Road Community Organization. And very excited to be part of this project and excited to have the input from all these city departments and just the investment of time, the involvement from the community and from business and property owners in downtown Derrida. I've always loved the village lifestyle that is possible here in Derrida. And looking forward to seeing more of that come to fruition with a flourishing downtown area. And that's it.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you to all three of our opening speakers, including Taiwo, and then the reading from Mr. Cherry. You guys are all longtime residents. You've seen a lot of the issues over time, and I know you've been big advocates and you've brought changes to your community that you wanted to see. So I'm glad that you were able to open us up and kind of get us going on the right foot. I'm going to go ahead and advance our slides. Again, I want to remind everyone, please stay on mute during the duration of the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those into the chat box. If you have any, that includes technical difficulties, or if you have problems hearing anyone as well. Also, as a reminder, please make sure your name is correctly entered and under participants, which you can do by clicking the 3 dots, and there's an option to rename. So just a little bit of framing, the Sugar Creek and I-85 interchange area, we started off some work, which I'll talk about in a little while, looking at the interchange last summer to understand some of the safety issues and how could we start to address them sustainably. Coming out of this, we looked at the whole of the Sugar Creek area from Nevin Road down to Nortron as having a shared future moving forward. So Sugar Creek, the Sugar Creek corridor we're looking at, like I said, is between Nevin and North Tryon, which includes I-85, and it's part of the Corridors of Opportunity work, which we'll explain in a little bit. So with today's agenda, this first hour, we're really going to be introducing the project, some of the details about it, some of the work completed to date, and then we'll be going into some breakout rooms between 7 and 7:40, where we're going to share what we've heard so far from stakeholders and just in recent engagement that's been held in the area, just to gut check, are these the right things? What else is there? What's missing? And this is why we're having a public process. We want to make sure we hear all of your voices and make sure that we're thinking about this from the different perspectives that come into the room. Then the last thing we're going to do is just to report out on those breakout rooms. I wanted to point out that the recording will happen for the presentation and the report out. We're not recording during the discussions since there are going to be multiple rooms going on at the same time. And what we're hoping that you're going to get out of this is understanding the process of the Sugar Creek Corridor Playbook and what to expect out of it, as well as what to expect next out of this meeting. And make sure that your voice is heard. So when you get into those breakout rooms, you'll have facilitators who are going to be asking questions, and we just will ask that during that time, you will hopefully be engaging. Even if you have some technical difficulties with maybe unmuting yourself, feel free to drop things into the chat to help fill out the questions that we have to go through today. So the goal of this whole process is to really establish a shared vision for West Sugar Creek as a vibrant corridor. As we are going through this process, as Mr. Witherspoon was saying, we all have the same thing in mind. We want this to be a vibrant and safe corridor, and you all contribute to making that become what it needs to be, and that's why we're all here. So we really appreciate you taking the time. Some of the big questions that we've heard today are things around, for example, public safety. How do we address some of the public safety issues that we find on the corridor? How do we address the appearance of it? We also have questions around coordinating various transportation options. Right now, it's very easy to get around by car on Sugar Creek, but it might be a little bit more difficult if you're on a bike or you're maybe pushing your child in a stroller to get to the park or something like that. So how do we start to think about those different transportation modes? Other things that we'll be looking at is understanding some of the small business concerns. How do we support them and the surrounding community, jumpstart some initiatives? What are some of the resources we have available that we can make more evident and make sure people have those in their hands? We also want to make sure that we're capitalizing on the strategic location. Sometimes people are surprised when they come in and say, sorry, there's somebody on not muted. If you can make sure you mute yourselves, that'd be great. So how might we capitalize on the fact that you're not very far away from the university area, and you're also not very far away from Uptown, which are two business hubs, places where people have jobs. It's a real opportunity to be able to jump on to the highway and quickly get to where you need to go to work. Also, how do we ensure improvements in the corridor are enjoyed by long-time residents? So one of the things that we've heard loud and clear is we want to make sure that especially our seniors, people who've lived in the community for a very long time, continue to enjoy and are able to even more so enjoy some of the benefits that we want to bring to the corridor of making sure that it's vibrant and safe and a community that really serves all the people who live in the area. So just a reminder, strong and vibrant business corridors are the cornerstones of healthy neighborhoods. Neighborhoods, obviously, there's the houses and the neighbors that live in the houses, but you want to make sure that your adjacent corridors are really supporting that the community that's within it. And I know that's come up in the Hidden Valley reinvestment plan, how there's a disconnect sometimes between what's happening on the corridor and what's within the community. I'm quickly going to go through the corridor playbook process. So again, like I said earlier, the study area ranges, let's see if I can get my arrow up. It ranges from Nevin Road up to the north, North Tryon to the south, with I-85 pretty much right on the center. The primary study area is this area in dark orange. These are the properties that are adjacent to Sugar Creek Road, or they're owned by the same property owner who it fronts right on the corridor. And then you have this extended geography with the area of influence, which is really looking at the adjacent neighborhoods. And the boundaries that you see right here are not following neighborhood boundaries necessarily. These are following census tract data, so that when we pull numbers, you can see where those numbers are being pulled from. I also want to point out that this is a team effort. Obviously, you see, oh, I just realized that I made a mistake in this. Community organization group should be City of Charlotte. I will make that amendment later, but we have Economic Development, Planning, Design, and Development, CDOT, the Department of Transportation, Housing and Neighborhood Services, CATS, and CMPD, as well as some other supporting groups helping with this effort. We have the community organization groups, which are your coalitions, your individual neighborhood businesses. It's also organizations that are serving the community in the area, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, but they're providing services to the residents in the area, including businesses. Kimley Horn is also on the call, and they'll introduce themselves in a little bit. They are real estate and economic advisors for this project. They'll be making sure that as we go and look at what is the vision for the area, what are our goals for the area that the community is sharing with us, how does that relate to the market realities, and what's feasible, and what do we need to do to make things feasible to achieve those goals. We also will be working with folks in the community and creative engagement specialists in Charlotte to help make sure that we get good participation in this process. We want to make sure that nobody feels like they were left out. And part of that also is just working in partnership with all of you. You know your neighbors, you know your friends and family who live in the neighborhood. And we want to make sure that everyone who would want to know about this process does get that opportunity to engage. So corridor playbooks, a little bit about them. It's different from your typical area plan in that it's really a co-created vision, which is somewhat similar, but it's one where we're really getting just to action steps, and it's not just about land use planning. It's also why we bring in market studies so that we can understand the realities of what's on the ground. If you'd like to take a look at an example of a playbook process and the outcomes, West Boulevard Corridor, there's a website on the city's webpage for the West Boulevard Corridor Playbook, and you can take a look at what the community in that area went through and did, and what were some of the outcomes of their work together a couple of years ago. As it says on the right-hand side, it's a process rooted in the community. We want to make sure we're being inclusive in our engagement. We also want to make sure that we're thinking about the benefits and burdens of growth. I think everybody's had a conversation about gentrification and pros and cons and displacement, and how do we make sure that people who are long-term residents benefit from the good things that you all want to see in the community. We also want to make sure that we're identifying partners along the way. The city is going to be able to provide some of the resources, but some of the things we'll need our partners, for example, at the county, to be at the table to be able to address, because it's just something that's beyond what the city typically provides. Thankfully, we have some good partnerships there, and we also have other partners in the community, such as developers that you all know, and property owners who are all potential partners in this process. And so in this work, we want to be identifying who those folks are and how do we bring them to the table so that we can collaborate and get this work done that we identify. We also want to make sure that over the next few years, you'll start to see physical change. That's one of the things that I've heard the most, just having some one-on-one conversations in your community, is people will say that this area has looked the same for the last 10, 20 years, and it's needs some update. It needs a little bit of life that's more updated right now. So changing the physical is something that we want it to be a visible change as well. And we want to make sure that these projects are actionable, and that it's not just a plan that will sit on the shelf, but really a playbook saying, here's what we need to do to get to where we said we want to go. So with our process, we'll be engaging residents throughout the whole process. Hopefully you all have registered via the link that was provided. We'll make sure that you're on the listserv so that you'll get updates along the way. But there's basically 3 different steps that we'll be going through. The first step is to gather and analyze data. So some of that has been done already. It's just some basic desktop looking at what are the maps say, what does the data say around demographics. But we're going to continue to add to it, and things like tonight are going to help us better understand where we're starting and what are the realities that you see on the ground, because obviously the data says one part, but we want to hear from your experiences. What else is there that we can learn from? The second step is really establishing that vision, making sure that we have a shared idea of where we want to go. And that's built upon the data that you're going to be providing us today through your input of what's going on and where do we want to go, where are there gaps, what's missing. And we'll start to develop some strategies for change. We'll also be developing priorities for those strategies, because you all know that when you have a lot of ideas, you sometimes just have to start with a couple, and then it grows from there. You identify step 1 so you can get to step 10. Those are all some of the realities we've all faced in doing our various types of work. Our third step is determine actionable outcomes. So we want to make sure that we're working with the programs that we have available at the city. We have different tools in our toolbox. There are economic development programs that are out there to help support workforce development, as well as helping support small businesses. We also have public realm and design and capital projects, whether it's placemaking projects, neighborhood matching grant projects, or projects such as stormwater improvements or street improvements, streetscape improvements, traffic calming improvements, etc. And we also have the tools of future land use and zoning changes. And so Taiwo was on earlier and he mentioned Charlotte Future 2040, and I think quite a few of you have been involved in that process and identifying basically how does the city want to grow. So a couple of things to keep in mind. So today is our very first workshop. We're in the inventory and analysis phase of the work. So right at the very beginning, we'll be going through the market assessment and building from that work, and everything builds off of each other. And then we'll start to develop some strategies with you at our second workshop on June 24th. So make sure you mark your calendars. I'll have a little bit more information about that towards the end. And then lastly, as we get towards the end and we have the things that you all want to see in this process, we're going to have a celebration and an announcement of what some of those initial projects are going to be. Hopefully we'll be able to have something outdoor and fun, and I'll get to meet some of you in person and not just the screen. And I look forward to that. All right, and with that, I am going to kick it over to Cherry Grant, Cherry Smith. We just had this conversation. So Cherry, are you there?
I am here.
Hi, thank you. All right, I'm gonna kick it over to you and I'll just advance whenever you say.
You can, well, actually, let me introduce myself. My name is Cherry Smith. I am in the city's Economic Development Department. I am the project manager for the Corridors of Opportunity program. I'm very excited about this opportunity for I-85 and Sugar Creek. I grew up in Hidden Valley, so I'm very familiar with the area and super duper excited to see all of the things that are to come for the area as a whole. Next slide. So the Corridors of Opportunity program is designed to really take the current tools that the city of Charlotte has across multiple departments, and that's represented by economic development, planning, transportation, and our housing and neighborhood services department. So through the work of this playbook process, we will develop an implementation plan, and with that implementation plan, all of the directors of those departments, including Taiwo and Pam Weidman, come together to determine what is the best strategy for investing within this corridor. So through this program, we do like to try to have very targeted investments that will kickstart and spur private sector investment. Now, what we all have probably noticed in the city as the city has grown, where you see public investment, private investment follows, and then you start to see just neighborhoods and corridors, especially our business corridors, start to flourish. And with those corridors flourishing, you start to see changes within the neighborhood that's to the benefit of all of those that are living there and everyone that's within the larger community. So the program is designed to support revitalization in our corridors, and then, like I said, strengthen those adjacent neighborhoods in the process. And again, it is key to ensure that residents that are currently staying in the area have an opportunity to continue to stay in the area. So we execute on this program by layering our investments. We coordinate the timing of the investments that we deploy within the corridor, and then we add in all of those components that make for what we call great communities. Next slide. So just to give you a little bit of example of what you can kind of expect when it comes to corridors of opportunity investments. Rachel spoke about the West Boulevard playbook. With that playbook, we did get to implementation for that corridor with this fiscal year. And this is an example of the intersection of West Boulevard and Remount. So if you're familiar with the Charlotte area, you probably know this intersection very well. So the residents have identified bus shelters, public art, more opportunities for dining, more activated public spaces. So we gathered that in the playbook process, and we will have all of those things incorporated into our intersection designs going forward. So not only are we looking at what residents express, but we're also looking at how can we deploy that in a way that will make for a safe environment, a healthy environment, and an environment that folks want to come and live, work, and play in. Next slide. So just to give you some examples of some of the types of projects that we do through Corridors of Opportunity, we have economic development, public-private partnerships, we do small business support, we do business matching grants, which is a huge program for our small business owners here in Charlotte. We support affordable housing developments. We are supporting the West Side Land Trust to build in long-term affordability for housing units in the city. Through our planning department, we do a lot of public space activation. We've done public space master planning, where we bring residents to the table to really envision how they see public spaces being used in their corridor and how they would like for those to be enhanced. And in our transportation department, we really look to incorporate Vision Zero principles. So it's very important that folks feel comfortable walking along our corridors, whether you're 5 years old or whether you're 50 years old. We want to make sure that we are providing infrastructure investments that will ensure pedestrian safety, in addition to improving streetlights and enhancing our intersection, whether that's putting signals on mast arms, taking down wires, anything that we can do to really open up intersections and areas that would promote more folks getting out, walking, and just really being a part of the community. I think those are all of my slides.
So with this last slide, it's actually just to point out, like, even though we were just talking about 4 different departments who are really involved in the corridors of opportunity work, this last slide points out the fact that we do have partners at the table within the city, but also external. So Charlotte Communications, some of you will get to be in a breakout room with Miss Beverly Sanders, who's on the call. She's from Charlotte Communications. We also have Emily Yaffe from the Office of Equity, Mobility, and Immigrant Integration, who's going to be in one of the breakout rooms as well. We have Katz, who's involved, fire, CMPD, and of course we also have County Park and Rec and Public Health, and they're listening into these calls, and hopefully will help us identify some ways that we can all advance together to accomplish some of the goals that you guys have identified. We also, of course, have the library and CMS in the area, and we want to make sure that they're involved in the process as well. Just to show that this is not a small group effort, as you can tell. Thanks, Cherry. All right, and then I am going to share a little bit again. Let's see, Aaron Gillespie is going to be our next speaker. We have the whole corridor we're looking at between Nevin Road and North Tryon is 3.16 miles. So that's a pretty good distance, and probably not one very many of you go for a run on, but it could be a 5K if it were a little bit safer to run on. And Aaron, are you unmuted and able to jump in, or do you want me to keep going on this slide?
If you want to pull out any highlights here, and then I can jump into our economic development support.
Perfect. All right, yeah, so some of the data, if you guys have ever seen the Quality of Life Explorer that is online, you can look at some of the data that's shared here on those different geographies. This data is pulled from the area in yellow. Again, this is built off of census data, and it's mostly 2018 data, so it's not the most up to date. It will be updated. It's updated pretty much every year. Some of the data is every other year. It just depends on which layer of data you're looking at. Some of the things that might be noteworthy is we're looking at 10.23 square miles is the area of influence. So that's a pretty large area. You have a population of over 27,000 people. And there are about 1,800 jobs here in this area. Your median income is $40,130, and your homeowner occupied housing is around 47%. So again, if you want to check out this data, the Quality of Life Explorer has a lot more than what this little snapshot provides. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Erin.
Thanks. So welcome, good evening. My name's Erin Gillespie. I work in the Economic Development Department on our Great Places team. So I work to support all of our efforts in building up our business corridors, that business matching grant program that Cherry mentioned earlier, and generally just supporting all of these efforts along our corridors. So for this particular study, we'll be supporting the Playbook process in a number of different ways. We have a number of companion studies that will go on alongside the Playbook, and the findings from those studies will be incorporated into the Playbook, and you'll see those reflected in the recommendations and priority projects that come at the end. So one of our first ways that we'll support the study is through what's already been underway, the EY talent study. So this is being conducted by a consultant, a local team here, EY, to look at the talent that exists in our corridors, and they've focused on the corridors of opportunity geography, including the Sugar Creek and North Tryon area. and understanding the barriers and opportunities facing the workforce in those areas. And the output, the final report will have some recommendations for strategies that align the needs of the folks who are living in these areas, who are looking for work, and our programs internally, and some suggestions on what we could do to make it more efficient. This is really important because, you know, some of the opportunities we see on the corridor are that, you know, you've got great access to the blue line, the transit line. There's tons of opportunities, a lot of gateway opportunities and access, and that's a really important challenge that a lot of folks face when it comes to connecting where they live to where they work. Our small business team, our business innovation team, will also be spearheading what they're calling an ecosystem assessment. So, you know, this is a really, this is really new for us. We didn't do this as part of our earlier playbook process, but I think it's such a great match for the Sugar Creek corridor. We want to take a look at what small businesses exist on the corridor. What's it like to run a small business on West Sugar Creek? What are those opportunities? But what are the challenges they face? And who's supporting them? What organizations or other small business resource partners are out there or would like to be? So our business innovation team will be spearheading this work. You know, small business growth and development was something identified in the Hidden Valley Revitalization Plan. When we think about downtown Derrida and what we've, you know, even in our first few conversations learned about there's so much opportunity, and there's a lot of momentum when it comes to small businesses in the area, you know, coming out of all of the challenges they've faced over the last year. And then, you know, finally is that real estate market analysis, which Kimley Horn will be leading. So this is, you know, our whole comprehensive look at the corridor. What are the main industries in the area? What are the trends? Where are things going? We're really we'll focus in on the commercial nodes and try to suss out and identify those future development opportunities that exist. There are just so many, you know, opportunities and characteristics that we can build on and that impact all three of the geographies that we'll be diving into later today. With the interstate, you know, it is a gateway, you know, to all parts of the corridor. There's just so much development happening around the blue line that'll impact the corridor. So we are going to do that deep dive that really looks into all of it. And to give us a little bit more information on what they'll be doing, I will hand it over to Jessica from the Kimley Horn team.
Thanks, Erin. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Rossi. I'm with Kimley Horn, and with me tonight is Laura Ornstein, my partner here. Laura and I work on market analysis and market assessment projects across the country, but we live and work here in Charlotte. And so we're really excited to be here tonight and be part of this process for a corridor that I get to drive when I travel around my own community. But because we work across the country, we're able to bring back some national best practices in terms of how we look at the real estate market and kind of marry the two together. So Rachel's done a really nice job so far this evening of teeing up the use of a market-based process or having a process that's grounded in market reality. So really what we're planning on doing is answering three very general questions. We're going to establish a baseline of corridor specific information that we'll be using to try to bring out the question of where are we today? Where is Sugar Creek Corridor today? We'll be following that up by identifying unique advantages of the corridor and also understanding the challenges or weaknesses. And that will help us to answer the question of where are we going, or probably even more importantly, where should we be going? And then finally, and most importantly, is we're going to be using all of that information to inform, both short-term and long-term strategies for revitalization of the corridor. And that ultimately will go into how do we get there? Those are our three general questions, but in addition to that, we'll be kind of looking at some more specific questions for Sugar Creek specifically. What is the market supported mixture of uses that would be appropriate and defensible along the corridor? How many hotel rooms? That was a big piece of the thought process behind how we put our approach together, is looking at the hotel rooms in the corridor. How many can be supported sustainably, and what does that mean for other opportunities as it relates to hospitality? And then finally, how do we leverage your existing assets, some of which Aaron just mentioned, between the activities in the south of the light rail and the 85 interchange, to really create vibrant hubs? If you want to skip to the next slide. So how do we do this? And this slide it's a little complicated, but it really gets to our process. And so we look at everything from, national, external activities. And I think a great example of that today is the COVID-19 pandemic and what impacts that has had on the real estate market. We want to look at how this corridor, particularly because you have an interchange at I-85, is positioned in the region. We're going to look at existing supply conditions. So how do the different real estate sectors currently perform along the corridor? And we'll be doing some demand forecasting to understand what the development opportunities are. And I think what's really great about this process is we don't have to start from square one. A lot of the things in the dark green squares are actually informed by the sprint report that was already prepared. So we're really able to hit the ground running. And I'd be remiss to mention, if I didn't mention, the fact that we are going to be doing some stakeholder feedback. We'll be listening very intently tonight in the breakout rooms to make sure that we're marrying not only the quantitative data, so the numbers, with the qualitative data that is so important to bring the two together. Ultimately, that leads into us understanding better the development opportunities for the corridor, and then preparing an implementation and action plan in creation of that market-based strategy. So ultimately, where we want to get to is having a strategy that can be completed and that is timely and phased out to maximize success in the corridor.
Thank you, Erin and Jessica. I really appreciate you guys giving some clarity to the market assessment piece. As Jessica was just saying, we're building from not ground zero, because you all have been doing really important work, whether it's participating in the design sprint that was last summer, or whether it was being a stakeholder in the Hidden Valley reinvestment plan, or even just some of the engagement that's happened in Dorada. There's been a lot of work that Teresa's been leading up with the group up there, and a whole bunch of other folks like Marion, just engaging on what is it that we're trying to strive to get to, and even like the comprehensive plan, seeing what is it that this looks like once played out over here along Sugar Creek. I wanted to point out some of the data that we have on what the city's been investing in the area over the last 10 years. So this is kind of just on the southern edge, and it doesn't impact the whole of the corridor, but obviously the Blue Line extension is something a major infrastructure project that's happened in the last 10 years, and that's brought a few changes to the area. We also have street improvements, mostly in conjunction with NCDOT on Graham Street, Mallard Creek extension. There's also been work done to improve intersections, whether it's crossings, traffic lights, or even just pedestrian crossing improvements. Some traffic calming work has gone in some of the neighborhoods in the area as well. We've also had a lot of stormwater drainage improvements and water main replacements, which are things that a lot of people don't really think about because it's underground, but it's something obviously we all care about. We want to make sure that we can all drink healthy, clean water, and we want to make sure there's no flooding or leaks of our water pipes, and want to make sure that our stormwater is going to where it needs to go, and hopefully not flooding our streets, which I know it does on occasion because Charlotte's a city of creeks. So going back over the last 10 plus years, let's looking at what's been talked about. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversations around the Red Line commuter transit and what does that look like and how do we work with the different partners who are at the table or not at the table that we need to get at the table to be able to move it forward. There's also the Cross Charlotte Trail, which goes down on the southern edge through in the Hidden Valley area. We've also, if you go back and look at some of the plans for the area, they all call for preserving single family neighborhoods to make sure that it doesn't just become like a new big giant development, but that you have those communities where you get to know your neighborhoods and have a little bit of a yard, et cetera. Also creating complete streets, making sure that there's sidewalks, bicycle facilities, street lighting, improved rail crossings. And what's interesting, if you go back and look at these old plans, you'll see that this is called for not just in the last 5 or 10 years, this is going back for 20 years that they've been calling for complete streets. Also, Derrida, back in the 1985 plan already, they talked about the town center of Sugar Creek between Nevin and Gibbon Roads, how to strengthen that and the small businesses of that area. And I know we've had conversations with some of the folks around in Derrida around how do we make that happen. And so that's something that will probably bubble up again in this process. And the good news is, like Cherry was mentioning earlier, this is a project that's not just a plan, but it's informing how the city invests the quarters of opportunity, which is a funding stream to actually make some things happen. Last but not least, we're of course working on the Charlotte Future 2040 plan, which is underway, and that's going to be informing place types, but also informing changes that need to happen with the Unified Development Ordinance. I also want to point out there's been a lot of work done around housing and some of the community-led projects in the area. So kudos to all of you all in the community for bringing in the last 10 years over $235,000 worth of community engagement grants, whether it's around beautification, infrastructure improvement, signage, crime reduction, public safety improvements, lighting, traffic control, all of those things, park open space, public space, greening. You guys have really brought in some really wonderful things through your hard work and your neighbors' hard work. There's also been, since 2018, $131,000 of Jumpstart micro grants going to the general area, not just specifically to the study area, but for the geography surrounding this area. We also have 6 housing trust fund developments in the area that created 560 affordable units. And also over $1 million has been provided to through Charlotte House Charlotte in the area, which is looking at things like down payment assistance. So you guys have really been helping us get the word out on some of these programs that are out there, and we really appreciate it. And there's opportunities to coordinate some of these investments so that, again, we can get to that fact that long-term residents continue to enjoy and bring in more improvements that you want to see in this area. Business matching grants, neighborhood board retreats are some of the other things that have happened in the area. And just a couple more maps of what we've pulled together. In the last 10 years, you can look at some of the different building permits that have been pulled. You can see that the little dots are upfits and additions. The bigger dots are repair and replacement permits that have been pulled. You can also see where new developments happen, which are the pink crosses. And then demolition are the black X's. And you can see a lot of the demolitions focused around the industrial areas near the light rails, and there's a few over in the Derrida area. So you can start to see some of the patterns of where investment's happening. This is private investment, not the city, but this is where the people in the community coming into the community are investing some dollars into the area. And on the right-hand side, you see business matching grant programs. A lot of those have been on North Tryon predominantly, but it's an opportunity to bring it up further on West Sugar Creek. So recent engagement we're building from, Jessica mentioned the Sprint, and I mentioned it earlier, but that area was focused predominantly around the interchange and the businesses right on that area. It does include a little bit of the corner of the park, as well as the new affordable housing development across the street from the park. And this is just a snapshot of what all was involved in those types of properties. 13 hotels is quite a lot, and I think I've talked to a lot of people, and most people I've talked to have said 13 hotels is too many. That's why they're so cheap. Even the hotel owners will say that. So the question is, how do we get down to the sustainable number, which is the key thing that Jessica was talking about. How do we get down to the right number? What is the right number? The conditions for that area, the interchange, some of these things I think you'll all echo and understand. The interchange has devolved from its original use and intent. Like you would think that most of your interchanges, they're meant to serve people stopping off the highway, getting their gas, getting a snack, and then moving on the highway, but they're not, it's not necessarily being used in that way. There are 13 hotels, we just talked about that. Another current condition we're talking about is how it's very auto-oriented, and that's not really supporting some of the community lifestyle of the surrounding community, but also residents who live right up there, whether they're in the apartments or they're also long-term stay residents living in the hotels. And it's not really a great or safe environment to be walking around in, going to the grocery store in, or sometimes even driving in. Current condition number 4 talks about how hotels, businesses, streetscapes have taken unintended uses, whether it's serving a gap in housing needs. People who stay in the hotels, maybe they have an eviction record, maybe they just can't afford the first month's rent or the 2 months rent that's sometimes required by housing for rental housing now. Also, there's not much local food, so the gas stations serve as a place for people to go, and fast food places serve as people's main meals, which isn't really a healthy environment to be growing up in or living in. And it's also a targeted spot for crime. I mean, you have the highway there, which and it's close to another highway, I-77. You have all the industrial area over there. And so you'll see trafficking that's not supposed to be happening, not just car traffic. You'll see other kinds of trafficking that is not what this area is intended to do. So out of the sprint, there are several projects identified to move forward. The ones that are up in the front and center of what's happening are highlighted in red with red squares around them, rectangles. And then what you see highlighted in yellow is what we're working on today, is creating the Sugar Creek Playbook to guide redevelopment. That's what we're kicking off. And I also want to talk about recent engagement, including the Charlotte Future 2040 plan. I know Derida hosted an event very early on in the process to understand what the community wanted to see out of this process. And what this plan is going to do is provide guidance for how Charlotte grows, and it will inform future land use changes to the development ordinance and future city investments. So I want to thank everybody who was involved in that, and also everyone who was involved in the Hidden Valley Reinvestment Plan. It's not a city adopted plan. However, it is a community led action plan of what the community of Hidden Valley residents would like to see happen in that area. And as we talked about earlier, it calls for Sugar Creek Road as a strong edge to support the unique character of Hidden Valley and not to stand against it. And I'm sure that Derida neighborhoods feel the same way. They want Sugar Creek Road to reflect the community around it. And then also making sure that it aligns with the corridors of opportunity projects, or some of the ideas that align with corridors of opportunity projects include safe streets for people to walk on, children to play on, and around, and then encouraging home ownership, supporting small businesses, et cetera. Those are all things that the corridor of opportunity work can bring about. And now we're going to jump into the fun part. So we're going to do a little bit more dialogue where I'm not doing so much talking. We're going to be sending you all to breakout rooms. When we had you register for this event, we asked you what is the area that you're the most connected to, whether it's here, let me go to the next map, whether it's the Derida area or the Reagan Drive 85 area, interchange area, or if it's the Hidden Valley Farm Crest area. So based on your answers to those questions, we've assigned you all to breakout rooms. There are a few of you, I think, who still haven't entered your name yet, so you'll be staying in the main room with me, or maybe you've registered in a different way. And I'll make sure I get you into a breakout room so that you can join the conversation. But you'll see that when you go into this breakout room, you'll be focusing on a certain area. So if you're in the Derida breakout room, and we have quite a few folks from Derida here, you'll be focusing between Roman Road and Nevin Roads. If you chose the 85 area, you'll be focused on looking at Roman Road to Merlane. And then if you're in the Hidden Valley Farm Crest, you'll be focusing on the segment between Merlane and North Tryon. You'll have a few questions to be thinking about that you'll be going through together as a group. I want to make sure when you go into these groups, please make space. Please make sure you're sharing your voice. This is an opportunity really to hear from you all. As we've talked about earlier, this is the first building block. And yes, we do have some really great engagement to build off of things that you all have shared in the past. And so we're not starting from scratch, but this is another opportunity for you to really focus the effort around what can we be changing in the near term over the next 3 to 10 years, or 3 to 15 years. In some cases, there are going to be some things that take a little bit longer potentially. But what are the things that you would like to see change? And what are the things that you'd like to keep? What are those assets, those values, those things that Derrida is known for, or Hidden Valley is known for, that you want to be keeping? So we'll be jumping in and answering those questions in the breakout rooms. So again, make sure that you're sharing your thoughts, whether it's by unmuting yourself during the talk and maybe sharing your video with the rest of the group. It's also maybe not the ideal way of meeting your neighbors or hanging out and catching up with your neighbors, but it's the virtual version of seeing some of the folks from your area. But yeah, we want to just make sure that everyone has the opportunity. So also make sure that you're making space. If you see someone who's really quiet in the group, encourage them to share their thoughts of what are some of the assets and opportunities of how to get this corridor to where you want it to see it going. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Jacob. Jacob, are you there?
I'm here.
Perfect. You want to explain a little bit about what we're going to be doing with the concept board? Just
Yeah,
to
do you want me to
folks?
share my screen?
Sure. Let me
Okay.
stop sharing. Just so that people know what they're looking at. And Jacob,
Yeah, you got it.
You want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jacob Huffman. I'm an associate planner and urban designer with the Urban Design Center. And I am Rachel's right-hand man on this effort. Is everyone seeing the screen here? Awesome. So this is Concept Board. It's a virtual workspace. We've been using it with great success for other communities and other corridors of opportunity projects that we've been working on. And the way that tonight's group discussion is going to break down is you'll have a facilitator for this group. It will be Randy Harris. You can see his arrow there. And then there will be a concept board driver and note taker, and that will be my role for this group tonight. Just as a reminder to all of the concept board drivers, those three little the bars right there, if you click that, that's how you can get to your sections. And so what we'll do is we'll just go left to right here, and we'll start with one of these first questions that Rachel just mentioned. I'll be taking notes over here. From there, we'll move into the other questions that we wanted to address in the introductory part. And I think what we may try to do is go around robin, just so we hear from everybody in the small group. The next thing you'll notice here is a map of the segment. And these dots on here represent some previous submissions from the last 2 weeks of community members who I believe most of which are on the call tonight, of different ideas, identifying things like, I like this one a lot. This is a great thing to identify. This telephone pole or power pole is right in the middle of a sidewalk, so that's something to take a look at. We'll also be identifying any missing amenities, any opportunities for improvement, and community assets here. And then in order to just summarize the whole group discussion, we'll go through these last remaining questions here, looking at qualities, challenges, and additions to make your particular segment stronger. So that is Concept Board.
Perfect. Thank you, Jacob. So we are now not sharing our screen. We're about to go into breakout rooms, but I want to remind everyone that this is a team effort. And when I say team effort, remember that it's the city, our partners, whether it's the county, the library, CMS, but also you all. You all have been doing really great work, and it takes all of us to really make a difference. So some of you may know someone who can help advance some of this work here. Some of you are the people who can help advance the work here. So be thinking about that too as we go through this. If you can think of like some connections that we need to be making, bring that up during the session. This is very exciting to have so many of you in the room, and I'm really looking forward to going through all of the concept boards at the end of this to see all the things that you guys have shared out. It's a lot to go through, and as a reminder, we will have the session is recorded. We will be sharing this out, and we also are going to provide everyone the opportunity to weigh in via an online survey. If you guys are ready, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all. I was trying to see if there's any pressing questions. All right, Christy, you were going to check. You wanted to check that you're in the correct group. If you end up going to the incorrect group, just leave the group and I'll put you in the correct one. All right, so I think everyone who's left here. Everyone who's left here still needs to be assigned to a group. So is that correct? Okay, so Odell, you're going to transfer the host to me, right? Okay. Okay. All right, let me pause. I want to remind everybody that this report out is being recorded, and so hopefully we'll be able to capture everything. If you feel like you had more to say, don't worry. There is going to be a survey that will be shared out from this process, and it will be open for 4 weeks. So you have the opportunity to still weigh in. And for example, like I always find that helpful because I'll think of something after the fact, especially like in a group meeting. I'm like, oh man, I should have said this, or I forgot to mention this. So it's an opportunity to jump back in and weigh in through the survey and also share with your neighbors, family, friends who live in the area as well. I'm going to share my screen to talk about, sorry, before I share my screen, I am going to have folks report out. So let's start with the I-85 and Reagan Drive area. So I believe the driver there was Lorna taking notes. Would you be willing to share out your group's key assets to build from and challenges to face and opportunities moving forward? Oh, Lorna, we can't hear you.
I'm going to ask actually Cherry. I have some background noise
No problem.
for me, and I'll drive.
Awesome. So you said we were talking about opportunities and whatnot?
Just a summary of some of the, summary of basically those 3 things: community assets to build from, opportunities for improvement, and things that we're missing. That was
so the best thing, or one of the best things that was said in our meeting, people are our greatest assets, and the connections are our currency. So Ebony, thank you so much for that one. There are some great people that live in the Derrida area, the Hidden Valley area. So that was a huge takeaway. Of course, there were opportunities for more green space, just a lack of parks. You know, you have Sugar Creek Rec on one side, but you don't necessarily have anything on the other side. So I'm going to flip back and forth between good and bad, so I keep us all in a happy place. Culture was seen as a huge asset, lots of different cultures in the area. And then there was another one with just traffic concerns and walkability, especially if you're crossing over the I-85 interchange. I asked about the additional modes of transportation. I said, is anybody interested, or does anybody bike the corridor? And the response was not to live and tell about it. That's how dangerous it is to bike the section of the corridor that we have. And to be honest, it is quite dangerous to get over that bridge. If you happen to be anyone that drives over that bridge, there are no bike lanes or no bike lanes. Positive side was that it's very convenient to Uptown Charlotte. It was seen as quiet and serene. So overall, that's the report out. I just don't want to take up all the time.
Thank you, Cherry. I appreciate that report out. I am now going to jump over to the Hidden Valley group. So I believe that the driver there was Scott Carell. Can you provide a report out of some of those key takeaways for everybody?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, several key takeaways. I think our group had, I think pretty much everybody lives, so pretty much everybody lives in the area. Lot of people patron the local businesses along along our section of the corridor. Several people use the park, and there were also some, they thought there was, we kind of cut off at the end, but we also, we saw a lot of opportunities to make some improvements for pedestrians along the corridor. Specifically, the sidewalks along both sides of the street are pretty narrow. They're all at back of curb. And so there's definitely an opportunity to widen those to make it a nicer place for people to walk. And similar to that, you know, there's some new apartments going up across the street from Sugar Creek Park. So they felt like there was an opportunity there to create safer pedestrian crossing, you know, with crosswalks and pedestrian hybrid beacons, that kind of thing.
Rachel.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I just saw him. He's muted still.
Okay. I wanted to also say we didn't get a chance to get to all of them, but there is a sheet, I'm sure you've seen it in the folder, for the Hidden Valley area that has about 11 opportunities for improvement inside of the folder for Marjorie and Charlena.
All right. Thank you.
All right. I just didn't want I didn't want that to be missed.
No, that's very helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And then as a reminder, like if you guys come across more of your neighbors who'd like to weigh in, just make sure that they have the link to the survey. If we need printed copies to be distributed, we can do that as well. All right. Thank you to the Hidden Valley folks for sharing your highlights. All right. We have 4 different groups that tackled the Derrida area. Thanks for such great representation out here. I'm going to start with Nicole and Charlotte. Charlotte, if you're...
Yeah, I'm back. So what everyone really liked in this section was the walking trail, some of the historic buildings, the holiday flags that would be put up, that there was a major bus route. What they really wanted was to have safer sidewalks and safer bike lanes, as well as sidewalks and bike lanes where they don't exist. There was some concern that the existing infrastructure provided still didn't feel very safe. Also, connections to the Greenway, you know, on a map, it doesn't look too far, but getting there, you have to hop in your car. Things of that nature. What they also really liked the shopping center that has Maria's and a few other things. That was definitely the commercial hub that was used the most by this group. But they would always love to have a coffee shop or a farmer's market.
Great, thank you. All right, we've got several other Derrida folks. I wanted to see if anyone has some, I'm sure you all have things to add to this. So Beverly and Aaron Gillespie's group, do you guys have some things to add to that?
So we had a foodie in our group, and the best quality for our area was the Derrida Dairy Bar. We've heard rave reviews, so we all should check it out. I heard they have crab pies, so I'm excited about that. Some of the biggest challenges for this segment were the lack of sidewalks, the upkeep. So there's a lot of litter and unfortunately crime. Some things that would make the segment stronger would be activities for youth. So they love the park, but they would like to add maybe like a basketball court or things like that. So the youth can get out some of their energy and maybe channel that energy to other things. Also improve street lighting and traffic as far as speeding, but also add a grocery store, and a farmer's market and maybe a coffee shop. So just echoing some of the same sentiments that other groups had.
Thank you, Beverly. And then let's see, Grant and Emily.
Hello. So I had a great group. I might be biased, but I think it was the best group. We talked a lot about walking in the neighborhood, which was a lot of fun. I think that's what really dominated the conversation was having folks having lived there for a long time and really enjoying exploring their neighborhood. Some people doing that a little bit more during the pandemic, and that being a great way to see how things are developing. But also it sounded like pedestrians are probably some of our best monitors of safety with traffic. So we heard about different areas where the road curves, and that causes a lot of danger, not only to pedestrians, but also to others driving. I have two new restaurant recommendations for me. I think I've actually been to Maria's before. That one was mentioned quite a bit. And even though I live pretty close to a Chicken King, I haven't been to one yet. And so the Chicken King in this area is well loved. As far as biggest challenges, the main conversation was needing safer walking opportunities. It's difficult to connect between different areas of the neighborhood without being worried about crossing difficult traffic or going into areas where there isn't a sidewalk, so that limits how they're able to explore their neighborhood. And a way to make this area stronger is definitely connectivity between neighborhoods for pedestrians. And another thing was mentioned was better access to public transportation was a big plus.
Great, thank you. All right, last but definitely not least, we've got Randy and Jacob.
Okay, great. I really appreciate the group that I had and some of the community assets that we talked about and some of the things that we like to see. One of the great things that most people said that they lived in a great location. The location allowed them to get to anywhere they needed to be. The location was also close to other amenities that they had to go to. But at the same time, when you have a great location, one of the challenges is that sometimes if you wanted quality food, you had to drive to a different location. So people want to see more selections of fresh food products, selections, or even grocery store selections also too. And then the last thing that we kind of found out, I think we're going to have a walking group develop out of this team, because a lot of people drive everywhere they go, but also a lot of the team, everybody loves to walk. So walkability, sidewalks, and connectivity is very important. So that's a segment that they would like to see added as we go out through the playbook process.
That sounds awesome. If you guys get your walking group together in the next month, I say like we start it and I'll come and join. I'll bring some printed flyers and surveys that we can hand out to neighbors that we pass along the way. Does that sound good, guys?
Yeah, Teresa's giving you the thumbs up there.
I can see. I'm looking forward to that. All right. Well, thank you again. Does anyone want to add any last thoughts or comments before we jump into report out? We've got about a minute. If there's something major that you think is missed, go ahead and unmute yourself and shout it out.
I will say one thing our group talked about was a lot about the speed of the vehicles on whether it's North Graham or West Sugar Creek. Just makes it feel very dangerous, whether you're driving or walking, especially.
Hey, Rachel, I'd like to add, this is John Wall. I'd like to add some artwork. That's what's missing on our corridor. It seems like only certain areas of the city embraces the artwork. We need some artwork to make it more enticing. Thank you.
You're talking to the right group over here. Marion?
Yeah, and I would just add that I specifically said we get artwork at that Sugar Creek and Graham intersection to welcome people to Derita. There's room for that. And also just wanted to mention, we have several, what people were mentioning, the bus line. We actually do have some connectivity issues, but also none of our bus stops are covered. And they're used by people who need cover, and it would be great to actually have some bus stop shelters. There are already some sidewalks that are big enough, and hopefully we can widen others to actually get those, because none of ours are covered, at least in Dorada.
Okay, that's really good to know. And I will be passing that on to CATS because they're embarking on this bus priority corridor study. And they specifically asked me like 10 minutes before this meeting, hey, make sure you pay attention to anything about bus stuff. So I will be passing that information on.
Rachel, let's make sure we get that HR link to Marion.
Yes. Yes, it's much easier than it used to be. All right, so thank you again for your input. I want to point out that there were a lot of questions to go over. And so one of the things I would like everyone, even though you've participated in this section individually, like I said, you're probably going to come up with some things of some assets and opportunities. And this is such important groundwork. Like, we're not going to be able to get to the vision of where you all want to go if you don't understand what is experienced today and what needs to advance in the future. So make sure that when that survey comes out that you complete it, and there's an opportunity to drop in photos if you want to drop in photos of particular sites of where something is missing or where there's an opportunity, an asset to build off of, or a challenge. Just you can take those photos, drop them into the map. Or if the technology is complicated, you can just type in, just make sure that you mark what location it is if it's tied to location. But yeah, I just want to point out that there are things, this is just how things work. You'll think of a million things after we get off these calls of what to add. It's also a group discussion. It's an opportunity to hear what other people have heard, but it's also an opportunity to have conversations with your neighbors and bring it back to the group of what needs to happen as we move forward. So I'm going to share my screen for the last few slides of what's next so that you know what to expect. Please let me know if you have any problems seeing it. Can everyone see it okay? Okay, looks like it's good. All right, so what's next? So again, we want to extend the invitation. Hopefully you guys have all seen the signs. And again, big thank you to Marjorie, Charlene's daughters for helping, and Merritt and Jacob for passing these out in the Hidden Valley and Sugar Creek I-85 area. But also big thank you to Teresa, and probably there's several other in the crew from Dorada who helped put out yard signs to help get the word out. We have social media posts that the city's put out through Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor. So that's another way that if you want to repost or reshare, feel free to do that. And also updates. There's fewer people who have registered to be on the listserv than is signed up for tonight, and that's fine. We're going to put everybody who registered for this event onto the listserv. So you don't have to go through. However, if you want to get text updates and not just email updates, please do text I-85 to, hold on, that number doesn't look right. Beverly, is it just 17?
Yes, so it's 73224.
All right, hold on. Let me correct that so nobody copies that down wrong. And we can also put it in the chat.
Okay.
So say that number again, 73224.
Yes.
There we go. Now it's correct. All right. So again, just if you want text updates, because I know that that's often easier for folks, just use that option. You can also register for updates, and we can drop these links into the chat in just a second.
Can you share your screen again?
Yes, I just realized that I'm not sharing it anymore. All right. There we go. So I'm going to copy these over for you now. You can look at this and the survey. So if you want to get email updates, again, I'm going to automatically update you, but I want to drop in the survey link to you now, just in case you want to start. You've already had an idea that wasn't captured and you want to put it in. I want to make sure that you have access to the survey now. So let's see, where did my chat go for you all? I have to say, there used to be the days where I was afraid of public speaking. Now my days are afraid of technology not working for me. That is my reality right now. Okay, I can't find the chat box. There it is.
I dropped it in there for you, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm like, it's not showing up on my screen now. All right, so just make sure that you share this with your neighbors as well. again, this stuff will be made available online, recorded. And lastly, oops, second to last, there are some groups of folks that we want to make sure are at the table. So if you're a business owner, if you were paying attention earlier to the part where we were talking about the market assessment and some of the small business study that's going on, we want to make sure that business owners on the corridor are involved in that and part of the interviews. Please get in touch with myself and Erin Gillespie so that we can connect you for those interviews. Property owners as well. We also want to make sure that we're getting folks that are in the Farm Crest Sugar Creek neighborhood on the west side of Sugar Creek across from Hidden Valley. We want to make sure folks are involved from that community. So if you are in that neighborhood, please contact myself or Charlenia Duncan so that we can start to figure out how to get more of your neighbors involved in this work. And also we want to make sure that renters are involved. That's often a group that's missing in some of our conversations in corridors. And it's not necessarily because they don't care about the area, but it's also because sometimes they don't get access to the information. So we want to make sure that we are connecting to the people who are renting in the area as well. Last but not least, our next workshop is going to be June 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. So put that hold on your calendar. You'll be receiving an invite like you did this last time via, well, actually, it's probably going to be online before it even gets out. Its usual channels. So we'll be sending that to the listserv. We're going to be talking about the results of the survey work that's going on right now. We'll also be talking about the market assessment results, the emerging vision, and some initial strategies for change. It'll be an opportunity to talk about that emerging vision and also develop some additional ideas for strategies and start to prioritize like what are the most important things that we really need to see happen. And that can be segment based. We just need to know what are the things that really are the most pressing to start on ASAP, and also first steps to get to those things that are just going to take a little bit longer. With that, we are done and 2 minutes over time. Thank you all for sticking around. Does anyone have any last thoughts, questions, comments?
No, very good. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days at the end of the day.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Yes.
Thank you all. We'll be in touch. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
I can now do this.
Bye.